Wonderful. Thank you, Darcy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, really good. Stress is something that we all as humans feel. You'll know more than anyone about this, but how does stress actually show up for some people?
Well, it's a very unique experience. What stresses you out might be something that someone else can take in their stride, but also we change from day to day. There might be something that today could be extremely overwhelming, and tomorrow or the next day you take it in your stride. And I think that's part of the challenge. It's as much as basically the experience of stress, the biological experience of stress is the same for all of us, our relationship with stress varies. And particularly at the moment, life feels like an episode of Black Mirror. You know, when Netflix announced that they were launching a new series of Black Mirror, I thought, what's the point? Walking outside your front door seems to be more fantastic than anything you can find on the television. So there's a lot of us that are feeling pretty overwhelmed with the world as it's unfolding around us. You couldn't make some of this stuff up.
Yeah, it's interesting what you just said then about obviously different days. And one day you could feel that stress, another day you'd be like, no, that doesn't faze me at all. Does your mood that you're in on that day play a part in that?
I think there are so many different factors. How well you've slept, how well you've eaten, what the weather's doing, as you mentioned earlier. You'd like to think that when the sun's out, we generally feel a little bit better. It's what's happening on the news, what's come up in your social media feed, what messages you've received. I think that we are so easily impacted by things that are happening outside of ourselves. And part of this is being able to cultivate the right landscape internally so you are more resilient to what's happening in the world around you, particularly as the world seems to be unfolding series after series of events and experiences that potentially could put you into a reactive space and to create stress and impact your well-being.
Yeah, with the world at the moment, as you said, with Black Mirror there, but it can be overly overwhelming. And, we always get told to, only worry about what you can control, things that you can actually manage yourself. Because it sounds like now stress is something that we're going to have to just learn to manage every day.
Yeah, you'd think so. Now we've been around for 22 years. We came into existence in 2003, and when I created this organization, my belief was things can only get better with the way that technology is advancing, with the way we live and communicate. Things are only going to get better, and I had this vision of a utopian future. Now, bear in mind, 2003 was pre-smartphone,
Mm.
pre-iPhone, pre-social media, and actually, I was as far from the truth as you could possibly get. And I think one of the challenges is that, yes, life is becoming more demanding, more overwhelming, and actually the pace is increasing, not decreasing. As we keep creating new technologies that put more demands on us, and we're expected to be on from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. When something happens, we all know about it instantaneously. And I think this is really where we have to get to the point where we are up leveling ourselves to be able to cope with the ever increasing demands of modern life. Because sadly, way too many people are becoming overwhelmed and becoming victims to this. And when I say victims to this, like we have to appreciate that actually this is one of the biggest killers of young people in Western society. The main cause of death for a man under the age of 50 and a 10 to 19-year-old, both male and female, is suicide.
Mm.
So we're not talking about, oh, let's just, do a bit of meditation and go for a walk. We're actually talking about protecting some of the most vulnerable members of our societies. And part of this is getting better at having these conversations. That's what the Stress Awareness Month campaign was brought into existence for,
Mm.
is to create spaces where we can have these conversations and it's not seen as a pink and fluffy, and we're not telling each other, oh, just pull your socks up and get on with it,
Yeah.
but actually getting better at destigmatizing and removing the guilt and shame associated with conversation around stress and mental health.
I think when I think of stress personally, I think of, that whirlwind mind of you going, I've got this on, I've got that on. That's really in my head. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where I stand and I don't know how much more of this I can take. And that goes back to what you just said there about the pace increasing in our modern lives now. How can we make sure that we're not adding extra stress into our lives unnecessarily?
There's always a choice. We don't always like the choices that we have, but there is a choice. You potentially may well be inviting more stress into your life. Now, you know that phone that you've got in your pocket that most of us are carrying around with us?
Yeah.
There is a button on the top of it or the side of it. It's called the off button. It's the brand new shiny button that most people never use because they are literally always on. That is a choice that you are making. If you find that you are too busy doing stuff to go out for a walk or get a fresh air or do some exercise or eat a healthy meal, again, that is a choice you're making. I appreciate by making a different choice, there could be consequences. For example, taking the time to go out and get some fresh air or turn your phone off a little bit early or not turn your phone on for a couple of hours after you wake up. The consequence of that is the things that you would do in that time, you're not going to be able to do, but you'll have the time and capacity to do other things. Now, what we've got to bear in mind that a lot of the things that we are experiencing in modern society are based on the choices we're making. The fact that we have, a mental health issue around the world, that we've got obesity epidemics, these are basically down to people's choices. Now, one of the things that I think is important in a world of information overload, this year we're not introducing new content. It's not like, here's the top 10 things to do to deal with stress, because everybody already knows everything, but
Yeah.
nobody does anything. Everyone knows you should drink 2 liters of water a day, for example, or eat 5 bits of fruits to vegetable, or walk 10,000 steps, or sleep 6 to 8 hours a night, but nobody does it. So even the basic things like that, if you are aware of that information but take no action against it, there is no point introducing new information. So actually, the theme for Stress Awareness Month 2025 is hashtag lead with love. And this is a really basic, simple concept underpinned by a term in psychology known as unconditional positive regard. And it's about showing kindness, love, compassion, empathy, but not just to others, to ourselves as well. Particularly right now, where the world is experiencing levels of polarity and insanity and conflict like we've never seen before. Like in the past, we could agree to disagree on any number of issues, on football, race, religion, whatever our beliefs are that we differ on. We could just agree to disagree and have debate, discourse, and discussion. We've kind of arrived at a point where if you don't agree with someone's perspective, you've kind of all of a sudden become the enemy. And I think there's a lot of people out there that really are struggling because they've lost their voice, their inability to express themselves because of fears of reaction or concerns, particularly in the social media driven world, for example. So, and part of that is also not just our kind of inability to express ourselves to others, but also to ourselves, to express our truth to ourselves. What do I really need right now? Do I need another hour of doom scrolling on my phone or spend another hour doing emails? Or do I actually need some fresh air? Do I need some time alone? Do I need some time with my family? And part of this whole kind of theme is to be able to show ourselves unconditional positive regard. Because when you hold strong emotions towards anyone else, let's say you were angry at your sister or brother that annoyed you, upset you about something, but you're a nice person, so you're not going to express it to them. So you just kind of simmer in silence. Now, here's the thing. If you are angry towards someone else and they don't know, you're the first person to experience that anger. And if you don't express it, you are the only person to experience that anger. There's a lot of us that are creating strong emotions towards others, particularly if it's mainstream figures like political figures or, so on and so forth. You're directing sort of strong feelings and emotions towards others, but you are literally the only person experiencing them. Now, I think the lessons that we can learn from historical figures that showed us a slightly different way. Nelson Mandela, great example, 27 years in prison. He didn't come out seeking revenge and retribution towards those that put him there. He didn't come out an angry person. Actually, he came out seeking peace and reconciliation. For me, that is a perfect example of unconditional positive regard. That's someone that was able to show love, compassion, and empathy, where anger potentially would have been a warranted reaction. Mahatma Gandhi, another great example. I'm not a religious person, but the books, for example, Jesus on the cross, saying to the Romans that crucify him, "I forgive you." These are just examples where we can stand above, and it's not for the benefit of others. When you show unconditional positive regard, love, compassion, empathy towards others, who's the first person to experience it? You are. In fact, if you don't ever express it, you are the only person to experience it. And particularly in a world where it's easy to get angry, to get upset and get frustrated, and knowing that affects you before it affects others, how can we find a place where we can create what we want to see more of in the world? And that comes back to this sense of love, compassion, and empathy. So that's the theme that underpins it. And ultimately, when it comes to our mental health, our ability to deal with stress and resilience, being able to be kinder, more compassionate, and empathetic towards others and to ourselves, for me, is a really great place to start a movement that creates positive ripples of change.